We'll do what we can. So, Tim Elmore, hello,
Hello.
welcome.
Good to
Um,
see you.
you as well.
I
How
like
would you
the,
introduce yourself? I find that a fun, horrifying question to throw at people.
yes. Well, that's a great question. I've not ever introduced myself
Oh,
like this. I am a person who loves my family dearly,
okay.
and you know my kids well.
That I do. That I do.
Just love them, and so it's the joy of my life to just hang with them and
Hmm.
have no agenda. Love what I get to do with my life, which is really developing an emerging generation of leaders who are ready for their careers
Hmm.
and ready for life. I love popcorn a lot.
Okay. You
Yes,
do. You always
I
had your own little homemade.
yeah
I forgot all about that.
machine. I've got a.
I
It's
forgot all
like a
about that.
movie theater machine that Pam got me for my
That's
40th
right.
birthday.
I forget. You
Yeah,
guys are huge, not movie heads. Whatever the
yeah.
flick,
We're
whatever the
movie
frame.
lovers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
So, question on that favorite movie of all time. Can you make such a
yeah,
conclusion? Quite a
yeah. So I have different categories, but my
okay.
favorite movie probably of all time is one that may shock you: Schindler's List. You remember that?
Shocker. Blown
Steve
away.
Spielberg. I mean, I love comedy, but that is
Sure.
such an amazing treatment of World War II and
Hmm.
the arc of this man's story from kind of being selfish business tycoon, make money
Hmm.
to I need to help these people who are, being, that are going through this Holocaust.
Yeah.
So anyway, I love that story and I love the way Steven Spielberg told it.
So I confess, I actually have not seen that
Okay.
movie, even though it is one of the top. I think,
Yeah.
according
Yeah.
to many lists, it is the greatest movie of all time. So
Yeah. Yeah.
there's it should literally be at the top of your list to see. Just to answer for myself, I think it's Blade Runner, but it's The Matrix, depending on the day.
Oh, yes.
I
Yes. Yes.
just
Yeah.
those
You have a
speak.
very complex mind. That doesn't surprise me that you would like
Oh,
those.
I mean, it's not that complex. I'm like, hey, it's Descartes' demon, and it's discussion of like, what are we? That sort of
Yes, yes,
existential dread. So,
yes. That's right.
and it's got that cyberpunk vibe. But I should see the Schindler's List. You mentioned World War II. Let's just hop into what is going on. I mentioned a question that is kind of intentionally a bit amorphous, which is what's going on in the world? Sort of like what is the state of things, which is hilariously complex. But
Yeah,
the World War
yeah,
II reference I'm bringing is particularly China. There's a pandemic, sort of the less
yeah,
fun
yeah,
tidbits about the world,
yeah.
in kind of
Well,
a. So go ahead.
yeah, I'll toss a couple of thoughts back to you.
Sure.
One is cliche. I
Okay.
think mental health may be the most important issue we face, at
Hmm.
least here on Earth right now, among
Hmm.
our life right now. Just the anxiety that existed even before the pandemic was high,
Hmm.
particularly in the emerging generation of young people.
Yeah.
And it's even higher now. The pandemic did us no favors in terms of that.
No.
But Walker, here's a couple of thoughts that might be fun to chew on.
Sure.
Um, I think this last year was a great accelerator, meaning it
Yes.
sped up almost anything that was happening, good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
The I mean, schools forever have been saying we need to be better at technology. Well, suddenly we had to rush to be better at technology because
Yeah.
kids were at home. Businesses
Yeah.
that said we need to do better with diversity and equity and inclusion, suddenly they had to be rushing to that goal, and
Mm-hmm.
and they should have.
Yeah.
But I just feel like all of that created a bunch of decisions in front of us, and many of us now just struggle with decision fatigue.
Sure.
We made a
Sure.
year's worth of decisions in 1 week or 1 month, and
Yeah.
we're just weary, even though we're just sitting in front of a screen.
Mm-hmm. And typically the answer is more coffee, but there's a threshold there where you're like, okay, it's too much. It's too much.
That's right.
So you are primarily an educator of the youngins, and I found you are growing leaders. It's not just growing the
Yeah.
younger generation, but leaders. So I guess a bit of a tangent from the question that was originally proposed. What is the um, what is that look like? Do you have sort of like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
practical, almost like roadmap, less of like who that kind of person is, and more sort of like what do they do? What
Yeah.
do we do in this new world is essentially the point.
Well, it's a great question you ask, and it may be I don't know, a moving target as we move forward because
Sure.
culture just changes so rapidly. But let me tell you the impetus behind my starting growing leaders. I had worked for Dr. John C. Maxwell for 20 years, and John trained
Not the
leaders in
physicist.
the corporate
Sorry.
world. So while John was training leaders in the corporate world, I kept thinking, oh my gosh, these life skills and principles could be so helpful
Hmm.
for a sophomore in high school, not just a
Sure.
48-year-old
Hmm.
who's maybe gone through a divorce or two, ruined a company or two. You know what I'm saying? Could
Sure.
we prevent some of these problems?
Hmm.
So
I love
all
that.
the while, when I saw youth organizations that were doing good work, many of them were just, let's help them graduate,
Yeah.
or let's help them stay off drugs and not get pregnant. And I'm thinking, that's all good,
Yeah.
but what if we could build a mindset
Yeah.
that said, I'm going to solve problems and serve people, solve problems and serve people. So that's my simple working definition. It's not to give a badge to somebody and say, you're the CEO. It's more about, what if we graduated millions of kids that knew how to solve problems and serve people? Maybe we could make this world better.
Hmm. Well, Tim, I think that's pretty badass, if I may say. If I may say. I'm just a massive fan of that sort of kind of
Yeah,
planning mentality of not only like,
yeah,
where are we, and that
yeah,
short-sighted, frenetic, feral, that's the word I'm looking for, feral mindset, but of like, where are we? Let's take a
yeah,
second. I know we're in a pandemic, but how do we plan to
yeah,
make the future good? And that's hard. And you're
yeah,
gonna, as we chatted before, you're gonna catch some flack for that because people are gonna
yeah,
be a little bit,
yeah,
they're gonna push back against ideas, as of course they would and should. Um, so yeah, let's make that, or explain to me, like, what does that look like practically,
yeah. Okay. Yeah, good.
because sort of just as a bit of my framework for like where we want to get
Yeah,
to is kind of away from some of the big issues such as a global war. We don't want to do that,
yeah,
but we do have
yeah.
some powerful characters kind of inciting that type of movement. There's the
Mhm.
climate collapse stuff. There's
Yeah,
artificial intelligence. There's the wealth distribution thing. There's many issues.
yeah, yeah. So I read a book recently that in it had a story that I think illustrates what I'm trying to do.
Hmm.
It's just a little parable, but the book is called Upstream. And here was the parable. Two guys were fishing in a river, just having a good time chatting. And they look off to the left and they see a child drowning in the water, just flowing down the river, drowning and screaming.
Well, that's not what
Well,
you
they
want.
quickly throw down their fishing poles. They both jump in, hold the child up, save his life.
Hmm.
But as they do this, they look upstream and they notice another child coming
Mm,
down. They go, what is up with this? So
yeah.
one guy hands the kid off, picks up the next guy. They look up. Here's a third one, and a fourth one, and a
Hmm.
fifth one. And about this time, the first guy hands the babies off to his partner and just gets out of the water. Well, the guy still in the water says, hey, where are you going? I need your help. And he goes, I'm going upstream to tackle the guy that keeps throwing these kids in the water. And of course, the point is, if we can prevent the
Hmm.
problem, isn't that better than just reacting to the problem?
Most certainly.
We can stand in the river and try to save all the babies coming down, or we can tackle the guy. So, one phrase, Walker, that I've used at Growing Leaders for years and years and years, it's better to build a fence at the top of the cliff than a hospital at the bottom.
Totally agree.
Follow that? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, and it's cheaper to build a fence than a hospital.
Absolutely.
And yet,
Absolutely.
I have found
Yeah.
in nonprofit work, it's easier to raise $1 million for a hospital than $1,000 for a fence, because people only react to crises, it seems like, and tragedies, and they do need response. But if we could stop them from happening, and I think my way is, if we could train these kids
Hmm.
to think well, maybe they can be better than their parents' generation. And that's what I'm looking for. Our generation didn't do a great job overall. And I think
Hmm.
now we need to place our hope in getting these kids ready to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, hey, I know we like kind of ruined the plan a little bit. Let's try
Yeah.
and let's remedy some things. Let's do better. I love that. Um.
Yeah.
So jumping ahead a bit, because I just think this connects well, is morality in these things, right? We mentioned previously sort of a common ground. We need to find some
Yeah.
virtues, whatever terms
Yeah.
we want to give to them. They're roughly the same.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, that that's a good idea,
Okay.
which I'll explain why as briefly as I can. And then secondly, I'm not sure that that's possible.
Yeah.
So, again, briefly, Nietzsche is a philosopher. He's not at all perfect, but I find him stimulating. Had a book, The Genealogy of Morals. It's very good. And it's basically that, like, hey, if you're working class, or in his case, a slave, These are the set of morals you should have.
Yeah.
Peace, meekness, and this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you are a ruler, basically flip those. And I think we're very much seeing that in the world, where if you're, I don't know, a country, such as China or the US, you just get a really big stick. You spend a lot of money on your military, and you don't spend a lot of money on, I don't know, helping out the poor, even though that is a good investment. It's an investment to get kids educated, and that does benefit you better in the long run, but
Right.
stakeholders, etc. So how does that play into habitudes, your work, and just that idea of sort of principles that are true and absolutely like that, meanwhile defecting, sort of playing the kind of quote-unquote evil master role is contrary to that?
Well, I definitely see the inside of what you're saying. It's hard to agree upon a set of rules of life and so forth, especially the way how pluralistic our world is right now.
Yeah.
So no doubt about it. Let me tell you why I take my angle, and I don't think I've got all the answers, but here's my angle. When you and I were chatting earlier, I talked about being timely and timeless.
Yes.
So we definitely have to be timely. We've got to forge ahead in science and technology. I'm a diabetic. I'm so thankful for the science that has happened since I was first diagnosed. I am still alive today, 20 years after I was supposed to be gone. So, and I thank science and technology for that.
Wow.
But in addition to timely, and I do believe in all that, the timeless part for me is I believe in every generation, let's say the people of that time, maybe even the elders of that time who've accumulated a bunch of wisdom, would say there were a handful of values that really helped us sustain our civilization. So here's how I play this out today, Walker. I'm an employer, so we have about 20 people working at Growing Leaders. I believe honesty is a timeless value. I will always hire an honest employee over a dishonest one. If I was interviewing two people and one said, I'm kind of dishonest, I'm going to go with the honest one.
Yeah.
Discipline. I'll always hire a disciplined person over an undisciplined person. Now, that doesn't mean the other guy's wicked. It just means that's a value. That's a good thing. And I don't know that it will ever go away. It may be redefined. Discipline may be redefined, but it will always be a good thing. So that's why I think we've got a marry the timely, timeless. It's a swing set. I swing forward, I swing back, I swing forward, I swing back. So
I guess a practical way I think this plays out is, for instance, in the tax code, it has come out that most of the, Fortune 50 or whatever companies don't really pay taxes. And in many cases, they're actually getting paid in subsidies and these sorts of things. And, that's not necessarily dishonesty, but that's not... if you want to sort of succeed as a leader, you shouldn't be honest. You shouldn't be all of these other things. You would hope that your competitor are. Then, you have a massive competitive edge. So I guess for our leaders, should we not teach them not necessarily the ways of evil, but sort of tough love in a manner of speaking?
Yeah, I'm with you all the way.
Convoluted.
Well, first of all, I bet you if we were to interview some of those leaders that are finding loopholes in the tax code or whatever, they may go, "This isn't dishonest. I found a loophole in the tax code." So maybe we
lobbied for this loophole. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. So in one sense, maybe we need to change our laws, but in the other sense, you're right. Somebody could easily get in that situation and go, dishonesty actually helped me get ahead. And I would say it depends on what your report card is. So my report card might be different than that guy or that gal's report. I want to put my head on the pillow at night and be able to sleep and live with myself. Now, maybe they'd say they can because they live in some distorted world.
The benefits of being a true sociopath.
Yeah.
They're real.
But for me, success is finding my gifts and serving them up to the world and making it better by the time I die. It's my faith plays an important role. My family. I want to be respected by those who know me best. Isn't it easy to get respect from a big audience that doesn't really know you or follows you on Twitter, but your kids don't respect you? I want my kids to be able to look me in the eye at 75 years old and say, "Dad, I want to be that kind of person too." So that my report cut might be different than that corporate Wall Street guy that's finding loopholes and
Mm-hmm.
doing that. Yeah.
What a fascinating. It's just, I guess, very encouraging that people like you genuinely exist. I've known you long enough that that's, this, anyone curious, this is not a facade. This is the true Tim Elmore. And I believe your kids would attest as well, which is nice.
I hope so.
And so much of what we see in the world, not only just in the news, but kind of just sort of evident in the fabric of our existence, is kind of contrary to that.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of hop into the next thing with that, which is artificial intelligence, transhumanism, and technology really sort of just eating everything. Right, in sort of the natural world, being kind doesn't keep you alive. I'm sorry, but you need to kill and eat the bunny. I know the bunny's cute.
Yeah.
And sort of that reality is being really pushed very, very hard on us.
Yeah.
And are there going to be any jobs in that sort of thing? So I don't know. How does I know that's a discussion that comes up a lot. Primarily in like the future jobs for young people and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Is that something you guys consider a lot? I just know you're all in education, and I know the education system does a bad job at planning. I think you're better than them. So.
Well, I'm wanting to add value to that world for sure. So I did a book a few years ago called Marching Off the Map, and I talk about what would happen if we march into new territories for which we currently have no maps.
Yeah.
It's an allusion to Alexander the Great, who marched across the known world, conquering every bit of territory.
Wow.
But then he was known to march into lands they had no maps for. He turned his soldiers into map makers.
Yeah. You're a cartographer now.
yeah, exactly. That's right. But isn't
Promotion,
that cool?
Demotion? Who knows?
I feel like we're in that same place now.
Certainly.
We're marching into territory. We don't have a map for this. Yeah. So here's why I think, going back to the morals issue you brought up earlier, because artificial intelligence, because science and technology enables us to do so much now that we currently could not do, I'm wondering, are we ethically ready for it all? And I'm not the only one. There's thousands, maybe millions.
I'm with you, certainly.
Ask that question. So that's why I think, millenniums ago, the biggest skill we needed to really thrive was our muscles. You had to be strong to work outside.
Sure.
Then we needed our machines in the Industrial Revolution. Then we needed our minds in the information age. As we go into the intelligence age, which is what you're bringing up, Walker, smart technology, I think the key component is our morals. And again, I know that's controversial, but I'm just thinking, if we could agree on not a lot, but just a handful that we go, let's carry these with us as we make decisions on what to do with our bodies or to the opposite gender. Or when I was, let me tell a story real quick.
Sure.
When I was in England, London, England, a few years back, vacationing with my family, we were celebrating 2 graduations. Jonathan and Bethany were both graduating from high school and college.
Nice.
I was in a coffee shop early in the morning. Everybody else was still asleep at the hotel. And I'm overhearing a conversation as I'm getting my latte. And 2 guys were talking about the possibility. They were conversing about this in London. Just outside of London, there was going to be a new cafe opening up that was served by robots. So you would be served by artificially intelligent, beautiful looking robots, by the way, like runway model looking robots. Yes. And
that's a path of AI. I'm like, what are you doing? But
stay with me. With me.
Yeah.
And what they were debating about was you could get, as you went in early morning, a latte and a sexual favor from that robot. Yeah.
Sex for breakfast, like the race car drivers of old.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
So one guy was saying, hey, that's awesome. Isn't it amazing? You won't have to rely on your wife all the time. And the other guy said, wow, is that really what we want, though, that we just turn this into some... And again, I'm just saying, I don't even think we're ready for that conversation in America. Maybe we are, but if we had a foundation, and again, I know this may not be what all the listeners agree with, that said, we have a set that we said, this will better us as humans while we make these great advances in science and technology. That's what I feel like we need desperately.
Wow. So honestly, one of the reasons I'm doing this show is I have some opinions about those sorts of things. For instance, as relates to the sex robots and things, I think if they're just robots, mindless, unconscious,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
basically automatons, not living really, then, we frame it in that way, and it's, you know, probably most similar to the self-play masturbation
yeah,
algorithm.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
if it's a true conscious, living, sentient, more human than human, to reference Blade Runner, then I think that's a very different paradigm. And then we can talk about
yeah, yeah,
souls and spirits, and are these even
yeah,
meaningful terms, and that,
yeah,
this, that, and the other. Because I think in addition to just sort of the morality, we're going to need to do some philosophy. We might have to do some mathematics.
yeah,
And I guess my point in not only bringing this up, but really wanting to get your thoughts on it is, it's clearly we're unready. So let's get ready. Let's do that as quick as we can. And I'm
yeah,
sort of trying to throw my own whatever mental might I may or may not have at these sorts of problems, because if we don't figure this out, it will be figured out for us,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like China with mass sterilization, and won't get into the horrific details. But then also, companies like Facebook and this will make decisions based on their bottom line, which very unlikely has a good correlation to what a healthy society would look like. Um, yeah, it's do you have any either books or thoughts, or just other
yeah,
authors? I don't know. C.S. Lewis is a guy who you think
yeah,
have tackled some of these issues.
yeah, yeah. I love C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
Well, let me go back real quick to an earlier question that I never fully answered and then
Okay.
get to where you are now. You ask us, what do you do at Growing Leaders? How do you live out this
Sure.
raising up a new generation? At first, we operated B2C, so business to customer. We wanted to
Hmm.
go right to the end user, which is a student, a
Hmm.
middle school, high school, college student, maybe young professional. Our age range was 12 to 24 that we really
Hmm.
wanted to impact. Um, Along the way, we started realizing that not only can we not personally touch all the people we want to touch as students,
Mm-hmm.
but the adults that work with those students, the teacher, the coach, the employer, the parent, we're having a hard time connecting with that young
Hmm.
person in front of them. So we now move B2B. It's business to
Interesting.
business. So now I'm in front of more faculty and
Yep.
coaches and administrators, helping them connect with that. So hence the books I've written on the
Hmm.
Generation Z
Yeah.
Unfiltered, IY, etc. And I don't think I'm the know-it-all. I just want to help the adult
Yeah.
figure out that screenager that's in front of them that they don't even understand, and
Did you say screenager?
yes. Yeah, yeah.
Tim, you are so good with the names and the
Well,
witticisms, and it's just a delight to. I remember your temperature and the thermostat, or you have so many. It's fun.
well, metaphors help us, don't they? At
They
least they
sure
help me
do.
frame
They
things.
sure do.
So anyway, we're now working with that adult, and so part of our work is, yes, they need to read to learn in school, reading, writing, arithmetic for sure,
Sure.
but even as important as that is social emotional learning,
Hmm.
where they learn to make good decisions, they learn to control their emotions, manage their emotions, they learn to, you know, uh, be self-aware. All of those
Hmm.
skill sets that would fall under emotional intelligence, I think, are every bit as important. And here's why I say that. When I meet with employers, they're not asking in an interview if what the employee's GPA was. They're not
Hmm.
asking that. They're asking, can you communicate well? Can you work on a team? Can you listen well? Can you lead a team?
Hmm.
And that's what we're after. We're after the soft skills as much as the hard skills. So,
Interesting.
yeah, that's where we
So
land.
so part of that, which came up in another conversation I had recently on the show, which was kind of philosophy, but also just sort of literally teaching logic. The QAnon. I had a well, I had a talk with somebody who dabbles in the conspiracy theory stuff, and in addition to sort of soft skills, emotional
Yeah.
intelligence, and this sort of thing,
Mhm.
I wonder how sort of foundational those skills are on at least a bit of causality, deduction, induction, these sorts of things, which I don't think it's been a while since elementary, middle school.
Yes.
But I do find it a bit surprising that those are not included at all.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I'll say personally, I had a very hard time making sense of the world without those tools. Um,
Yes. Yes. So true.
Yeah.
Well, I know you're not directly asking this, but I think what happened was 100 years ago, there was still that one room schoolhouse
Hmm.
where a 7-year-old was with a 12-year-old, and maybe the 12-year-old was even helping the 7-year-old
Sure.
with the spelling, because the teacher was managing all ages,
Yeah.
in that one room schoolhouse in Indiana or whatever. Today, we've graded everything. And I understand that. It's actually a good thing. Sixth graders are with sixth graders, seventh graders, seventh graders. And so we aren't building our EQ as much when I'm only with people like me.
Hmm.
I really build those EQ skills when I'm with people unlike me,
Yeah. Yeah.
racially, age wise, gender. So I am a better man, a better husband
Hmm.
when I'm really out learning those skills. And you're right. That's what you use to make those hard decisions you have to make. It's not I'm better at chemistry, or not to take away from that. So anyway, we are now attempting to convince educators that these social emotional learning competencies are every bit as important, but we've gotten away from them because as we evolved with school, we got to a place where it was almost a what word do I want? A singular report
Monocultural
card. Yeah,
or
well,
monometric,
it's
something like that.
academics. Yeah.
Yeah.
So can I tell a couple of stories that might be fun
Please.
for your
Please.
listeners? So, Horace Mann, back in the 1850s, 150 years ago, was a great education reformer. And he
Hmm.
said, I believe building character is just as important as reading, writing, arithmetic.
Hmm.
I agree. And I think you're even saying, yeah, whatever we say that is, it's important to teach life skills, not just
Sure.
academic skills. As we move forward, though, we start grading our schools, compartmentalizing them. By 1914, America was having so many immigrants coming in because World War I was ramping up in Europe. So we had people coming in,
Hmm.
crossing the ocean, docking at Ellis Island,
Yeah.
and we were having to field thousands of them, yay, hundreds of thousands of them. So a gentleman was commissioned by the government to come up with an assessment to know where to send these people. You
Hmm.
belong on a farm, you belong in a factory, you belong here, you belong here,
Interesting.
where you belong.
Huh.
Well, Walker, he came up with a multiple choice test, which the school system adopted
Hmm.
shortly after 1914. So by 1917,
Interesting
1918, the
ring to
war
it.
is over. This gentleman said, I this test is for lower order thinking for the lower orders. It's not a good test to really evaluate if someone has learned something. It was meant to decide where they belong.
Yeah.
And so, but guess what? Our schools still use the multiple choice test to this
Yep.
day.
They're easy to grade. I'm
They're easy to grade.
sorry.
Yep. And of course, you and my kids both know, man, I'll just guess. It looks for a C. Looks like
Yeah.
it's time for
It's
C.
always
Yes.
C. It's always C.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So all I'm
That's
saying
funny.
is we meant well, but we've migrated toward this singular report card that really doesn't help kids get ready for life as well as we need
Hmm.
to. So yeah.
Interesting. And what kind of a something that has been occurring more and more is sort of decisions driven by algorithms.
Yeah.
Sometimes AI in a meaty sense, but sometimes just very simple linear. Details don't matter. I'm a nerd, um, and I'm wondering how that's going to look in the future because I know there's been a lot of backlash against. I believe pandemic time there were some oh well, they couldn't finish the class so we used AI to predict what their grade would be given their
Yes.
past
Yes.
the
Yeah.
past predicts the future, which it does
Yeah.
most of the time on
Yeah.
average, but is also not no one's that comfortable with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So your proposition, or do you how would you propose we muddle our way through those waters?
Yeah.
Because the alternative is just every teacher passes all their students because they don't want to have failing students. Of course they don't.
Yes. Yes. You're right. Right. Oh gosh, you just opened up a can
Yeah,
of
that's a
worms. Yeah.
massive question.
So I think part of the issue, Walker, and I'm going to tread on very tender eggshells right now because there may be people listening that are parents. I'm a parent.
Sure,
Your mom and dad are parents of
that they
you and
are.
your sister. Um, I believe part of the culprit is moms and dads in our day. And here's why I say that.
Huh.
We've moved from, let's say, 100 years ago or more, where having many kids was a great decision because you needed more workers on the farm. So you
Sure.
might have 11 kids.
And mortality rate, infant
That's
mortality
right.
rate,
Mortality rate was
it's
low,
not great.
infant death. So, but you had, it was not uncommon to have 10, 11, 12 kids because they all represented workers on the farm. As we moved from the farm to the city, having many kids was not only not a good decision, it was a bad economic decision because,
Yeah.
now you got to pay for all these kids. Today, I believe we have a set of parents that are very safety preoccupied. And I understand that. I want my kids safe too. But to the degree that we didn't let them skin their knee, fall off the monkey bars, go through some of the stuff that just teaches you how the world works. Yep. And so my phrases are these: moms and dads, we risk too little, we rescue too quickly, and we rave too easily. All of them are well-intentioned. When we rave, we want our kids to feel awesome. So we tell them they're awesome for putting the fork in the dishwasher. When really, in our family,
you should do that.
That's exactly right. We say, well, we all do that. Thank you, child, for doing that. Mom does that. I do that. Now you can see why, risking too little, rescuing too quickly, raving, all of those are well-intentioned. We rescue by taking that backpack down for our third grade child that forgot the backpack. And yet we teach him, oh, good. Mom will always fly in with her cape on and rescue me. And again, it sounds like I'm against kids. I'm not. I'm for kids. Sure. In fact, I'm so for kids. I'm saying, why do we do that? Don't we say, I know it's in you to figure this out. You'll learn to negotiate with your teacher and figure out how to make that grade up. And I had to do that. My mom and dad did not rescue me. So I credit them for building me to some of the good qualities I have, I guess, because they said, you'll figure this out. So anyway.
Yeah,
I know that doesn't answer the question totally, but I think we're part of the culprits. We meant well. We did so much. Here's a phrase. I'm sorry, I'm monopolizing this conversation. If our kids are not resourceful, it may be because we resource them so well. And that was well-intentioned, but don't you learn to be resourceful when you got to figure out how to do it with just a little bit, and I don't have a lot. And so not to oversimplify, but
and I think just sort of, I can just imagine somebody being like, I had nothing. What do you mean?
Yes.
And this sort of thing. So I actually did a video on this, Dan Crenshaw, and there are mathematical frameworks for like how much pain and suffering and difficulty and literally your learning rate is what it's called in AI.
Right.
If it's too high, you just die. We don't want to do that. We don't want you to go on drugs and horrible life and that sort of thing. So because that's occupying my mind.
No, it's a great point you make. It really is. Yeah.
And on the flip side, I'm a huge fan of kind of crazy people or people who went crazy, which is to say a lot of famous philosophers and scientists and artists and whatever.
Yeah.
Was listening to some Nirvana this morning as an example. And Nietzsche went crazy. George Cantor lost his mind. Are these features of insanity? I would propose so. Yeah. But I think that it's very likely that our society, for many good reasons, is not sort of big fans of this kind of person who's like, actually, I think all of you are wrong. I'm going to do it this way. Yeah. Michael Burry, Big Short, I guess is kind of a funny example where being that what is it? Sanity is not statistical, 1984. Everyone else is actually wrong. Everyone else is playing what they think is risky, and you realize, no, you are all playing way too safe. I want to go to Mars. I want to have a monkey playing mind pong. Elon Musk is what I'm referring to.
Yes, right.
And that's something I'm curious, like, how can we instill that, don't be a little risky, but be wild, be just beyond creative to our kids, knowing that it's very hard to patent ideas and it's hard to protect copyright in this world.
Yeah. No, I love the wild risk. I think that's often how we make advances. It's only the person on the edge that's going to lead us to a new place and hopefully a better place. So I marvel when I read about Elon Musk and what he's thinking next and what he's doing now, and it's just, oh my gosh, I would have never come up with that. So it's quite interesting. Yeah.
And maybe this is you can't. I don't know if you can make or encourage a kid to be something they're not.
Yeah.
But I've known a lot of really smart kids, and they're often the weird. Maybe they're autistic, whatever.
Yeah.
Everyone else is making fun of them, and I'm like, you're brilliant.
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
And then you sort of see them over the years just not pursue that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I guess I mentioned autism because autistics are both largely evident in the research space of academia and R&D and this sort of thing, but also with short lifespans,
Yeah.
suicide
Yeah.
rates, and these things. And you mentioned, well, obviously, Leaders is the name of the company, Growing Leaders,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I guess I'm sensing, and perhaps incorrectly, that there's kind of a bent towards not just it's not No Child Left Behind. It's let's find the people who will guide us forward, and some of those are not neurotypical. They're not your
Yes.
normal
Correct. Yeah.
people.
Let me volley back. Here's what I
Please.
would say. I think you're on the right track for sure. But I made a decision some years ago that leadership had less to do with a position and more to do with a disposition. So it's a way of looking at life. And so I don't need to wait for the badge or the student
Yeah.
council position that I got. It's more if I'm looking at life and I'm looking at something other beyond, I shouldn't say other than myself, beyond myself. I take care of me, but I'm looking outward and I want to solve problems and serve people. I want to do something that, that meets a need that I see in
Yeah.
Africa or right here in Georgia. That's what we're after. So I love it when I get in front of the entire student body at a high school or the entire college of business at a university or the entire athletic department, at Ohio State or Alabama. And we get to talk about that because I think it's actually inside of everyone. There's some sort of gift or strength that you're right. Sometimes it comes out in great oddities, the way they come across as,
Yeah.
"Whoa,
Yeah.
you're different," but it's in there. And if we could somehow unleash that, and I just believe it's there, then I naturally influence. I don't have to look for a badge or position.
Yep.
I naturally influence. Some of the most influential leaders in history didn't have a badge. Gandhi's leading this march. Jesus never had a badge
Sure.
on.
He did not. He did have well, that's dark. I was gonna say he had a cool hat. I'm like, that's not. No, scratch.
Scratch that comment.
Yeah.
Well, my point is we are going after the outlier for sure, but we're also trying to tap into that average Joe or average Susie that's in there in the gym, in the assembly, thinking this is a waste of time, but suddenly an idea happens. I'll give you a good example. I was talking not very long ago to a public high school, and we were talking about the pandemic and how we respond. And I said, did you know that Isaac Newton is known to us today because of a big epidemic that broke out in England? And of course, they all went, what? Well,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, certainly we probably would have come to know him eventually.
Sure.
But he was a student at Cambridge University when the Great Plague of London happened in about 1635.
Huh.
Well, thousands of people were dying. And so in their own version of social distancing, Cambridge sent all the students home. So Isaac Newton goes home. And when he gets home, instead of just vegging like many kids have done today with all the time at home,
Sure.
he thought, wait a minute. I've got a bunch of free time now. No one's telling me what to study or how to study it. I can do what I want. He actually develops, while he's at home, this theory he had been creating that now has become the subject of calculus.
Goodness.
We might not have calculus in the way we know it
Yeah.
had he not had some free time.
Leibniz has entered the chat. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and some people that may be a curse, not a blessing for some
Yeah.
people. But
The greatest of all possible worlds and the one in which I created calculus.
yeah.
Sorry.
But that was only the beginning. He also got his hands on a prism during that period of time.
Oh, wow.
And he bore a hole in the shutter of his window, and he was looking at light beams, and he came up with his theories on optics,
Wow.
which we still use to this day.
Wow.
And then finally, it was actually during this quarantine time that he sees that proverbial apple falling from the apple tree. That was when it happened.
Wow.
And he comes up with the laws of motion and the law of gravity. A year and a half later, Walker, he's going back to Cambridge with theories in hand. He shows his profs. They're amazed. Within 6 months, he's made a fellow. And within another year, he is a full-on professor.
Wow.
In his 20s. And I'm going, here's a young man that made a bunch out of an interruption in his life. And I'm
Wow.
thinking, kids, what could we do now? Instead of
Wow.
just vegging with Fortnite or Grand Theft Auto or Halo, what if we began to do something? Maybe build an app that helps elderly people get food that they need. I don't know. But that story in itself is a picture of how redemptive we could be with what we thought was a horrible thing. So the phrase, it's kind of pithy, get ready. The phrase I like to use is, what if we turned the interruption into an introduction to something far better than we would have had we had business as usual?
One of the most fundamental truths we can state with relative confidence is explore, diversify,
Yes.
and then at some point exploit, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
One thing that I am probably obsessed with a bit, perhaps too much, is the idea of psychosis, of living in your own mind, which said a less horrifying way is faith. In literally the Christian, to quote it as poorly as I can paraphrase it, to have confidence in what you expect to be true, but is not actually the case yet. Which said another way is kind of arrogance. Newton, here he is like, oh yeah, here's 3 laws of motion. Boom, I'm going to be correct for a very long time until we do things with space and things get to a scale where significant figures, whatever. A thought I think is worth considering, perhaps, is some people don't read fiction. They don't really imagine, and they're so beholden onto what is and not what will be or could be. Which much to get into there. Actually, some of it delving into acting, if you can believe it. Is that part of our curriculum? I mean, I know we have literature and this sort of thing, but so much of my life and my self and that sort of moral calculus is from books and stories and potentially even movies. You're a huge movie guy, aren't you? Back to that. Do you have any thoughts there? I know it's a broad...
Yeah, I do.
Kind of
First of all, I totally agree with what you're saying. Imagination is so important. I think it was Albert Einstein that said the greatest nation on the earth is imagination, or something like that.
Wow.
So I love that thought. So I have found in my experience, it's not everybody's experience, that a lot of my creativity and imagination comes from things that already exist up here, but then they get played out in a larger scope. So one of our habitudes, you mentioned the metaphors that we like to use.
Sure.
So listeners, habitudes are simply images that form leadership habits and attitudes. One of them is on creativity, and it's simply called Bikes and Birds. Bikes and Birds. Here's the story behind it. Okay. So there's always a story behind the image.
Yeah.
If you ever saw a photograph of Orville and Wilbur Wright's very first airplane.
Yeah. Looks kind of like a bike.
Yeah, it's true. It looks like a flying bike.
Yep.
Well, the reason is because by trade, they were bicycle machinists. They built bikes for a living up in Ohio. And yet for months and months and months prior to that Kitty Hawk flight, they had been reading books and studying birds and the flights of birds and what gives them lift.
Yeah.
And what they really did is combine 2 existing ideas, birds and bikes, to make a whole nother industry called aeroflight.
Yeah.
And so I think much of creativity, a lot of times we hear people say, oh, I'm just not a creative. I go, I don't know if I agree with that. You've just not tapped into combining some of the existing ideas that are already in your life and to create a whole nother. Johann Gutenberg pressed wine in a wine press and thought, what if I press words? And he pressed words instead of wine. But what a great thing. Thank you. You made books and we still use them. So I think imagination is important, but we get started by saying, what if I combine 2 existing ideas that seem unrelated and maybe come up with an entirely new idea?
How much does respect... I'm not a fan of respect. I think it is a cancer to the mind. I know. Clearly, you know, because often, it's sort of pushed at, it's like, be respectful, you're being disrespectful. I think what sort of happens is we police ourselves and we police our own minds, and we say, oh, well, that can't be done or that shouldn't be done. And obviously teaching that to children is little bit fraught with peril because you don't want, just a kind of an asshole. That's not what you want. But somebody who is willing to, if the boss is permitting, and say, actually, I think we could do it this way, and it would be better, we'd save money, and all that sort of thing. And maybe that is a cultural, for instance, I'm not sure if Newton was alive today. I don't think he's getting that fellowship. Sorry, but like, you got to pay your dues. I had to pay my dues. You got to pay your dues. You have to suffer just like I did. And it's like, no, I think that's stupid.
Well, I do too, but I don't know if I would say he might not have gotten that fellowship. I think it might have been worse back in England back then, than in the 1600s. Mm-hmm. We think it's bad today. I mean, think about the Victorian culture. Oh my gosh. Talk about no new ideas.
Not great. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you why I might differ slightly on your view of respect. I think maybe the key is we just got to find a mutual definition of it.
Sure.
I think that if I'm respectful to my employer, I probably have a better chance at getting listened to with my new idea.
Play the game. Absolutely.
Yeah. And right now, we're going through some significant changes at Growing Leaders, some of which are coming from 20-somethings. But I love it when they say, I have an idea. I'm not saying what we're doing is bad, but if we did it this way, we might get this. Approaching it that way is far better than just saying, man, this is idiotic what we're doing, whatever. So, and plus another reason is at my age, I remember being told by elders, respect your elders. Mm-hmm. I'm now an elder, and I think it makes me want to lean in to a young person when they show respect, and it makes me want to show them respect. In our office, we're trying to do mutual respect between generations, reverse mentoring. We're doing reverse mentoring. I'm sharing stuff I've learned about how this mission and industry works, but you're sharing new ideas that I don't even know because you know technology better than I do. Sure. That's a healthy culture, I think. But I think it starts with respect, at least in our place.
Yeah.
So, but then I need to give them the freedom to share that new idea, even if I don't like it at first.
Sure. And I guess that's just a key to sort of further embolden our definition. There's the sort of act of respect, which is massively important, and if you don't do that, enjoy being homeless or worse.
Right.
Probably want to respect the police, for instance. Regardless of your opinion, play that game.
Right.
But as far as clearly, I'm a fan of philosophy and theology. I think is a good time, regardless of the religion. And I think we are at our own peril if we sort of fall into a Pascal's wager sort of a, fear is useful, not necessarily so much for cognition and free thinking.
Right.
Not to say that stress doesn't mother of necessity is invention, or necessity is the mother of invention. So I guess I just wonder where that is in our society, and I mentioned this, kind of in lieu of the QAnon stuff, where so many people never mentally rebelled, not literally rebelled, but mentally rebelled against, what are the foundations of reality of our society? Is our supply chains for food and medicine really as strong as they are? Whatever. And then 2020 rolls around, and a lot of their brains kind of break. And that's kind of, I feel, to be expected. Like, how could we expect anything else? We haven't actually taught our future generations to realize that much of our society is really based on nothing. Hyperinflation and other fun subjects. So I guess that's sort of part of why I think that's valid, is so that we don't have a brain-breaking moment to where we truly become psychotic, not just imaginative, but we really lose touch with reality.
Right. Now that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, for
you gotta
me,
get going.
Well, I do. I do pretty soon here. But for me, I feel like I have adopted a transcendent compass in my faith. Sure. And like you said, there's many faiths, many religions. But for me, that's been kind of like having a compass that shows me a true north that has worked well for me and my family and so forth. My kids are totally free thinkers. Their faith does not look exactly like mine, for sure. But I love the fact that I think they carry a compass around. And I just have felt like with all that lies in front of us, that needs to lie in front of us, that's change. Carrying that compass in just seems to help me stay grounded.
Sure.
In a sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
I will say, completely lacking one whatsoever does
Yeah.
make things spicy, but not necessarily comfortable. Not that I would know. Not that I would know.
That's true. Yeah,
So,
that's right. Yeah. No,
awesome.
that's a great thought.
Cool. Well, Tim, thank you so much for your time. This
Yeah,
was a
it's been great.
blast.
It's been great to interface with you.
Yeah, I'm actually talking later today with one of the head of the C.S. Lewis Institute of Atlanta, who is such you'd love him, Bill Smith. So kind of like Bill Smith or C.S. Lewis is on the mind. Just such a
how about that?
Good stuff. So
yes, absolutely. Well, thanks for letting me talk to you. It's been fun.
Thank you. It means the world. Oh, that's not the right button. All right. Adios, Tim. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks.